in-depth and God-filled conversations with some of the brightest names in contemporary Christian music and worship. This is The Artist Interview with Gordon T.
And welcome to this week's episode of The Artist Interview. I'm your host, Gordon T, and it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to scale the world of contemporary Christian music and worship to bring to you some of the very most talented artists with amazing music and wonderful stories to share. And this week, I'm pleased to say we've got none other than Josh Baldwin with us. So before we meet Josh, let's hear this absolutely astounding track that many of you will be familiar with. It is Stand in Your Love. That is Stand in Your Love by Josh Baldwin. Hey Josh, how you doing?
Hey, I'm so good. So good to be here.
It's great to have you with us. Many people will be familiar with your music. It's been a huge blessing to me personally. Absolutely love it. But people may not be familiar with your story, who Josh Baldwin is, how you came to be a follower of Jesus, and what that journey's looked like for you. If you'd be happy to share some of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I grew up in North Carolina, out here in the States, and I grew up a pastor's kid. My dad was a pastor and still is a pastor, but he's also a worship leader and very much in music. And so, I grew up in that. That was where my appetite got just, started towards music and worship, was just playing drums with my dad. And then leading worship in my youth group, growing up doing that. And so, that's the beginning of the journey. Obviously there's a lot and a lot of different turns here and there. And, but yeah, I've just grown up always loving music. And honestly, I remember I was in college. I went to college for 2 years. I went to Lee University until I dropped out because I realized I don't want to go to college. I just want to go to ministry school and I just want to play music.
What were you studying at Lee University?
Well, you know what? I didn't know what I wanted to do because this is like 1997, 98. And back then I feel like, going to college to be like a worship pastor or a musician or like a church musician wasn't necessarily a thing, or, it wasn't something you thought you could do and your parents would be proud and think you're going to make a great living. But so I went to school and I studied Christian education because I thought, well, maybe I'll be a teacher or I'll be a youth pastor or something like that. And it was great. As a good experience. I learned a lot about the Lord. I learned a lot about music and worship, but I didn't go to class much. And
it's quite expensive to go to university, isn't it? So
I know.
Not going to class it doesn't seem like
I know
the right course.
I could have saved my family a lot of money if I'd have just done that at home and just but it was a great experience. You know what? I remember I fell in love with a lot of worship music when I was in college because I love the Lord. I went to all these outreaches and these ministries that were on campus. And one of them introduced me to just some of the worship music that I would grow to love. And Delirious. I remember getting the Live in the Can Delirious album when I was in college, and there's a lot of other stuff. Vineyard, some other place, Morning Star. But and that's when I really realized, like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a worship leader. I want to write songs, and so I dropped out of college and went to a ministry school, and then and that's when it started to hit.
When you dropped out, was it one of those? And it's quite a big decision to drop out of uni.
Yeah.
So at that point, was there pressure from your parents to say, well, look, you may as well finish it. If you've done 2 years, you may as well just get through it and come out with something. Or did you pray about it and just felt God say, yeah, you're done. You're not meant to be here any longer. Off you go.
You know what? I didn't feel pressure from them, which I'm so grateful for, because I think a lot of parents would, maybe I would now with my own, be like, okay, you've gotten this far. Why don't you just keep going? But I think they saw how just unhappy I was. I mean, not in like I wasn't depressed or anything, but I wasn't moved by the Lord to be. I knew I finally got a vision for what I really wanted with my life. And I think they were so happy about that. And they felt like a peace about just that I had a vision and some clarity for the road that I wanted to go down. That they were happy to support me in that, because I had just gone to college because that's in university because that's what you do, going out of high school. And I think they could see the indecision with that, and it was costing them a lot of money. So they were like, well, if you have direction this way and you have clarity, then let's go for it. And yeah, it just felt right. I felt like the Lord was on it. And yeah, it was a good step, good move.
That is good. I'll quickly tell you a story. I think I've shared it once before on my show, but when I was at university many years ago, I did computer science at university, and I'd never studied computer science before. So suddenly doing it at degree level, really crazy thing to do. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And early on in my second year, I think it was, I was going, you know what, this is so hard. I don't think I can do it. I actually don't think I can do this anymore because I'm not brainy enough, and it's too much. So and I remember I hadn't shared this with other people that I got to this crunch point, but I remember in the morning on a Sunday morning before church, I prayed about it and just felt like, God, I can't do this anymore. And I said to God, unless you tell me to carry on, I am going to give up. So that's what I said to God, because I thought I just can't. It's killing me. So I went to church. There was a guest speaker there, and he's talking about missions and going to the mission field. And this is absolutely extraordinary moment of his preach. He goes, and if you're a nurse, if you're studying this or that, God needs those skills on the mission field.
Yeah.
And if you're doing computer science, don't give up. I'm like,
wow.
Come on. I couldn't believe it. I was jumping around. I went up to the end. I said, that was God speaking to me about I was going to give up. And he said, well, I hadn't meant to include that in my talk at all. It wasn't in my notes. So just one of those moments when God makes it clear. So I just thought I'd mention it. So if someone's thinking of giving up, right? Josh's story is not a story that is God telling you to give up, but it is opening the door for you to consider it and pray for it and let God speak to you about what the next stages are for you. I just wanted to say it can work both ways, because for me, I actually didn't want to carry on, but actually God called me to it and it was good. So sorry, Josh.
No, that's so great. So encouraging to hear from people. And because I know for me, a lot of times I can end up maybe not making a decision because I'm scared to make the wrong decision. And my pastor the other day, he was like, listen, the Lord, it's hard to steer a parked car. So just, a lot of times we got to just step out and trust the Lord. And if that's not where you are, it's a lot easier to direct you into the right way once you realize maybe this isn't the right way. And so I look at that time as being like not a mistake that I went there, but just, I fell in love with a lot of things that I love now, and I wouldn't have as quick had I not gone to university there and discovered it. So
it opened up some new music to you, some ideas, some desires and some passions as well. So you dropped out of university, and what did the next sort of 2 years, next year look like then for you?
For a year I went home and to my little town in North Carolina, and I worked in we call it a mobile home factory here. Basically I built houses for a year.
Wow.
And just saved up money, and then went to ministry school in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's when I really started writing songs.
So ministry school, it's not necessarily something that we have very many of in the UK.
Yeah.
What is ministry school? What's the person? How long does it last, etc.?
I mean, it's basically kind of like a Bible college. It's a Bible college here. And it was, this particular one was a 2-year school that on the third year you did an internship. And so I did that. I went there, and it was great. I mean, it was like, it's more hands-on, it's more detailed into like, this is what I want to do. And I could even, we're studying the Bible, but then also you can get even more specific. And I worked a lot with the music and the worship department, and just even the practical stuff of playing and learning how to write songs. And that's where a lot of that just came alive in me. And then after that, that's when I stepped into more of a worship pastor role.
So what age were you when you started being a worship pastor?
Gosh, I was, oh man, now I'm going to date myself here. was probably 2004. I was like 24, 25 years old. And
Okay.
yeah, because it's almost 20 years ago. That's crazy. Wow. I was like, yeah, 24. And I was single, still not married. I didn't meet my wife until for gosh, 5 more years. I met my wife when I was 29. And and I was doing that. I was a worship pastor in North Carolina when we met,
But
got married.
what instrument were you playing at that point? Was that guitar?
I was just acoustic. I played drums too. I actually, when I went to the school, I started playing drums a lot more. And I would travel around with worship leaders and play drums. I traveled with Rita Springer for years, if anyone knows her. And yeah, just a handful of other worship leaders in North Carolina. I would travel and play drums, but also lead worship. And then finally, I think, 2008, I remember I did my first little album, and I started to really realize that I just want to lead worship. I just want to sing and write songs, and I'm not quite good enough to just keep this drummer thing up. And so I remember that was when I broke it to everyone, like, hey, I'm going to stop drums. And I haven't played drums since 2008, and it's been great. I haven't missed it at all. I'm not a great drummer, so I put it down. I put it down. But
So the album was
yeah.
called Changing.
It's called Changing. Yeah.
And I have actually been back and listened to some of the tracks on Changing.
Oh my goodness.
And I listened to the track Open.
Yeah.
It's 7.5 minute long track.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, the reason I singled out Open was because it is your least played track on Spotify. And when I say least played, it's got
That's
like
hilarious.
39,000 streams, which compared to some of the others with like 50 million streams, it's small fry. But I also thought, it's quite a good track, actually. So,
thank you. You know what? Fun fact: a lot of people don't know this. My good friend, and not many people knew her back then, but Kim Walker Smith sang on that whole album. So that's her on Open, especially. You can hear her voice big time on Open. But that the girl singing on almost every track on that album is Kim. So we were old friends.
That is cool. I don't know. So you were worship pastor for, was it 5 years before you met your wife?
Yeah, probably around 5 years, 5 or 6.
So being a worship pastor, right? So you're single.
Yeah.
You're standing at the front with a guitar. There's got to be quite a lot of women going, hunky, cool, talented, loves God, Jesus loving sort of guy up the front there, thinking they'd like to get to know you. Tell me the story about how you met your wife and how you knew that she was the one for you.
Oh, wow. That's a good story. I mean, I don't know if people were interested there. I definitely had a lot of people trying to set me up with people. That's what happens when you're single and in your late 20s and you're seen in somewhat, a lot every Sunday kind of way. Everyone's trying to set you up. But, you know what? One of the biggest desires of my heart was obviously to be married, but also I wanted to be a dad. I love my dad. We have a great relationship, and I couldn't wait to be a dad. And I think all through my 20s, when I wasn't married and I was not dating much and not meeting people that I would want to marry, I started to get frustrated because I was like, I want to be married, but also like I want to be a father, and I'm getting old. At that time I thought I was getting old. Which is funny now to think about, just, pushing 30, you think you're getting old. But all those doubts just creep in, and you just think you're never going to meet someone. And I remember the lady, a friend of mine, she would cut my hair. She was my hairstylist. And it was one of my best friend's wives. And I remember she got pregnant, and so she went on maternity leave and didn't work anymore. And one of my friends said, "Hey, you should go to my girl. I think you've met her before. I met her. She had gone to the ministry school like years later after me." And she said, I think you've already met her. I think you know her, but you should go to her. And she's also single, and she's really cute, and she's, sweet girl, loves the Lord. And so I was like, okay. So I went there for her to cut my hair, and it was my wife. And we just hit it off and started texting. We went for like a year of just texting and talking on the phone together. Cause she lived in Charlotte. I lived up in the mountains in North Carolina. I was at this little church up there.
So that's a long way to go for a haircut.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was always going to Charlotte just to be a part. The ministry that I was a part of, they had like church plants, and so I was always down there for that. And so, yeah, after a year, we started dating, and I was 30, I think, when we started dating, and we got married. I was 31 when we got married, and I just remember, just you get these promises, these words, these people would give you encouraging words or prophetic words or whatever, and to tell you about what's coming in the future. And it's so hard, I feel like, to see those things when we are just focused on our current circumstances and our current situation, and all you can see around you is the present. But I feel like that, I mean, I've had this happen over and over again in my life, and that was one of them, one of the first ones, where it was like, I realize now that this whole time I had been looking at the present things that are surrounding me, and that felt hopeless. And really the Lord was just trying to get me to look at, to not forget where I am, and not leave that moment, but also to hope in him and hope in the future that I have with him. And just to also hope that he has good things for me down the road. And one of the best things, if the best thing other than his son that he had for me was my wife, was this amazing woman who we're coming up on 13 years now that we've been married, and we have 2 kids. They're 12 and almost 11. And yeah.
So you were looking forward to being a father for way before that actually happened. What has God taught you through it?
I mean, I think there's a lot of the obvious answers of just, it's easy to know the Father's love for you is a lot easier to grasp when I feel how much love I just immediately have for my kids. The minute they come into this world, it's like this rush of, oh my gosh, I will do anything for this child. It's hard. People say it all the time that it's hard to describe. You love your wife, you love your spouse, you love your family, your parents, all this, but there's like this different kind of love that comes with when your child comes into this world, that just like, I like a lot of times choose to love, things, but like, I don't feel like I chose to love my kid. I feel like it's just like, boom, here it is. And I think when that happened, it did show me how much the Lord loves me. And not only that, but just even what I was saying earlier, like, yeah, of course he has good things for me. Of course he does. Like, he loves me more than I could even fathom. But I do feel like I have like a little glimpse of it in just the love that I have for my kids. So of course he's knows the plans that he has before me, and they're to give me a hope and a future. And yes, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing is just, you realize how selfish you are, when you have children.
Yeah. That's what I realized. I thought I wasn't until I had kids. I was, no, I am.
Oh,
I am. And I thought I was really patient. And then I had to learn that when they became teenagers as well.
Oh, that's
so,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, the teenage years are here. I mean, my daughter she's 12, but she feels like she's 16. So I'm right in the middle of that. And I know it's just it's glory to glory, and just like new levels, new devils kind of thing.
Oh yeah, okay. I haven't heard that saying before. That makes sense. So, have you ever written a song for any of your family members?
Oh, you know what? This is horrible. I haven't. I have tried multiple times to write a song for my wife, and I think a lot of times they end up being for the Lord. I end up like shifting them, and they turn into a song for the Lord or a worship song. And which is funny, and my wife picks with me a lot about that. She's like, you start these songs off, I think they're for me, and then you turn them but then she's like, I can't be upset about it. I can't get mad because you're writing a song for the Lord. But like, and I don't know if I'm just I know I'm very critical and a perfectionist when it comes to songs, and especially I feel like if they're for my wife, I have this pressure that like it has to be just so special and so amazing. And maybe because I just haven't done it. Maybe if I just start writing a bunch of them, then it'll take the pressure off that, I'm like, well, at least one of them is going to be good. But I haven't. I've written like, funny little songs for the kids, but I haven't actually. I have a lot of song starts for my wife that I just need to finish. But yeah.
I saw you had guitars on the wall. I was going to say, could you grab a guitar
Oh, yeah.
and do one of your family songs?
And just sing.
But if you haven't completed one that you'd be happy to do, then I feel like that would be mean of me to ask. So
I have one song. I have one song that I was joking around years ago. It's actually how I got my daughter's name. Her name is Eloise, and I wanted her to. I remember when we got pregnant with her. I told my wife, I was like, if we're having a girl, I love the name Eloise. Maybe we call her Ellie. And my wife loved Eloise too, so it worked out. And she was like, "Why do you want to name that?" And I was like, "Well, I just wrote this song one time, joking around with some friends about Eloise, which is just some love song about this guy wanting to marry a girl named Eloise." And so I sing that song for Ellie a lot, just because she knows that like her name came from just me joking around. But I'll sing it for you. If I can remember. Now it's the pressure's on for me to remember it. But she grew up in Atlanta, Wisconsin. I knew she'd be my girl. We all thought she was so responsible. She didn't have a care in the world. And she looks just like her father. We were made for each other. Eloise, come with me. So much I want you to see. I know it's scary, but let's get married and travel the world so we can see my Eloise.
woo! Well, that is a lovely reason to have named your daughter that. Beautiful track. So
Thank you.
And how do you feel about the fact that within a few years she might be dating?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's scary. It's a little terrifying. But I'm honestly, if I'm the guy, I would be more terrified of my wife than me. I'm gonna be the softy. I'm definitely gonna be, the dad and just make sure everything is cool and make sure he's a good guy, and maybe scare him a little bit, but he's really gonna have to worry about my wife. That's the I'm the soft. I'm not the hard one. She's the one that's gonna really just
lay down
the law. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got another track to play from you. The track's called "Where the Glory Is." It's the title track from your latest album. And could you just tell us all about Where the Glory Is? Why did you write it, and what do you hope to achieve with it as well?
Oh, this song, it's so special to me, and I think I feel like recently I've been writing a lot of songs that are kind of just talking about the daily walk with the Lord. And I don't know if it's just the older I get and a lot of my songs talk about how faithful he's been. And I think because lately I've been writing about just this daily journey and just the ups and downs of everyday life and how it is with the Lord. And when I do that, it just reminds me of how faithful he's always been to me. And that's what this song is about. It's about, I think a lot of times over the years when I sing about the glory of the Lord or listen to songs about the glory of the Lord, it's it's a lot maybe in worship or just seeing his glory, and it's this grandiose thing, which is what it is. But this song just hit me to think about, like, hey, because the first thing I got in it was the line, "This is where the glory is. This is where the glory is." And I was like, well, where is that? And I was trying to think of these, it's in all these, the miracles and the signs and wonders and all this. And it is. But for me, I was like, well, the glory and the beauty of the Lord to me is just that he's just with me. He never leaves me. He never forsake me. He's in me. He's in every season of my life. He's there. And that's like where the glory is. So that's where this song just took it kind of turned and went down this other road that I love so much. And I think I love the bridge too, because it just talks about, it's the Psalm 40 that I'm going to sing a new song. And when I think about that too, I feel like it's funny because in worship, I want to sing a new song. When I'm writing, I want to sing a new song. And I'm doing that, but it feels like the subject is always the same. It's always, this new song is just another new song talking about how faithful the Lord is and how good he is and how he's with me in every season and his love remains and never changes. And that's what this song's about, is just that this is where the glory is, that I'm never alone. He's always with me. And so, yeah. And so, I mean, I can just pray into that. I feel like that's what I want people to feel when they hear this song.
You can pray right now for people as they hear the track, that they'll know where the glory is. So go ahead, Josh.
Well, I just pray that, Lord, that you would just touch my friends as they listen, wherever they are, that your Holy Spirit, that your presence would just invade them right now. And that for those of us who are wondering, like, what's the next step, or where have you been, God, or why do I feel forsaken, that you would just reach out and grab their heart right now. And I pray that the peace of God that passes any of our understanding, that passes anything that we could ever comprehend, that peace would just flood them right now. 'Cause you haven't changed. I'm singing a new song about a love that remains. I'm singing a new song for all of my days. 'Cause this is where the glory is. You're the one I'm walking with. This is where the glory is. I'm never alone. This is where the glory is. Here and now until the end. This is where the glory is. Forever and ever. Amen.
And that was Where the Glory Is by Josh Baldwin. And I'm so pleased that Josh is with us here for the artist interview. Thanks, Josh, for all you've shared about your journey with Jesus so far. It's been amazing the way that God's released you into ministry and music that touches people's hearts. And that track, Where the Glory Is a beautiful track. And you prayed beforehand, but I'd appreciate if you'd be happy to pray one more time. But the thing particularly I'd love you to pray for is people who maybe are disappointed in their experience of God. They see people around them singing and worshiping and saying God is so good, but they feel maybe themselves just left behind sometimes, or God loves everyone else but doesn't accept their worship. Would you be happy to pray for that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Lord, I pray right now for those of us who might be struggling with just maybe we have a calling that we feel like you've placed in our life, or we've been prayed for and told that, hey, this is what the Lord has for you, but we're not seeing it yet. Lord, I pray that you would just first of all just help us to not rush things. I feel like, Lord, you've taught me so many times that things, when things happen in your timing, it's the best timing. It's the best for me. It's the best for everyone around me. And Lord, I just pray right now, if there's an urge to rush going into the next thing, that they would just put a hold, that you would just, Holy Spirit, grab us and help us to just not forget the season that we're in, and not to leave something, but maybe to wait until there's something to go to. And Lord, I pray right now that you would give us, that you would help any hearts that feel like they're just not content with the season that they're in, Father. Holy Spirit, I just pray that you would just come, bring peace, bring happiness, remind us of how good you are, remind us of your faithfulness and all that you've done, and that that you have good plans for us. And that, Lord, you have enough good things to go around to everyone. There's not a bucket of goodness that once it's up, that's it. You have we help, and when it's saying that, Lord, Father, I pray that you would help us to just celebrate others, that you would help us in those seasons to look at the people instead of looking at others and think that's where I'm supposed to be and continue to be discontent with where we are, but that we would look at them and just celebrate what you're doing in their life. And I pray for that season, that you would just bring joy and a patience that this sustains us in this season. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Josh, thanks so much for your prayers and for your music as well. It's great. I'd love to explore a little bit about disappointments in your life as well, though, because you talked about journeying with Jesus, not everything quite in his timing. Have there been things that you have to keep handing back to God because you go, that's not quite where I'd expect it to be, or something like that, with just God being in the middle of it and maybe him redirecting on things? Obviously, it comes out a bit from your story earlier as well about dropping out of uni, but it didn't sound like that was too disappointing to you.
No, that wasn't.
That don't sound like it works out quite nicely. Are there other things, though, where you just have to keep coming back to God?
Yeah, I mean, I think I hit a little bit with earlier with just wanting to be married, wanting to have a family, and feeling like it took forever. But I think one of the other things too is I all through like my 20s and I mean even my teens and my 20s and a lot of the early part of my 30s, I was leading worship, writing songs, traveling a little bit like in around North Carolina. But I kept getting these maybe words or encouragement from other people who saw like, you're going to do this one day, or and I felt like I saw dreams. I would have literal dreams of like, one day I'm like leading worship for thousands and all this kind of thing. It's just grandiose dreams. And which I would bring hope until like, years would pass and things like that weren't happening, or maybe I'm not making the albums that I really want to, and they're not getting out to the people that I want. And I just remember going through years of being so disappointed in all of that. And so much so that I was forgetting even where the Lord had placed me in that moment. And like a lot of those years I was in this little church in the mountains of North Carolina that had maybe 200 people. And most of them were, 40 years older than me. And I was just by myself, like, well, Lord, what is going on? Like, why am I here? Like I thought I was supposed to do all these mega things and just, build the kingdom for you, but also build my ministry and my songs get out to the world and all of this. And I just remember I feeling like the Lord was like, you're trying to like pastor your dreams. And I've asked you to pastor these people right here that I put in front of you. And if you'll just water if you will not forget where I put you last and go back to that and just keep moving ahead in that and keep pastoring these people, then I will water the garden of your dreams. I will pour into that. And when in due season, which is what we just prayed, when it's time, it'll be time for you to walk into that and you'll be ready for it. And I think I felt like I got a glimpse of that enough to like keep moving ahead, but it was still hard to not be disappointed and to not understand why certain things weren't happening in my time. And I think that was probably one of the biggest disappointments or not disappointment, just struggling seasons of my life. I go back and look at that. And even after being married, I still struggle with stuff because I'd go to my wife. I'm like, why, this is a great song. Why does no one want to do that? All these things that, you just, and she's so grounded, and she's a great blend of, she has this fire lit under her that she will like, when the minute she gets like a little bit of direction from the Lord, like that's where we're going. Like we're doing that. And so I'm just like, I trust her. But she's also great at holding me and keeping me grounded when I'm struggling with, why isn't this happening? And she's good to know, like, well, because it's not time for that to happen. And we don't want to go into that season not prepared, because it will destroy us. And that's what happened. I think I was 35 when I finally, signed on with a large worship movement and a label that wanted to record my songs. And it was just like, it was unbelievable. And I realized years later, like now why the Lord had it happen when he did, and why there needed to be a maturing, there needed to be a growth. And it's helped keep me grounded now, because I realize now, like, why, like I fell in love with Jesus. I fell in love with leading worship. I said yes to leading worship when and wherever. I did not care. Didn't have anything to do with money. And it's, there's been ups and downs, and it's, a lot of time when it is your job, there's like it naturally can like make some of those passionate first seasons be a little harder to attain. But overall, like I feel like I've never lost that passion and that love. And I think a lot of that is because of the faithfulness of God, but also just the Lord holding, like not throwing me into those seasons until I was ready and until I was, older and just, and almost gave up on it and didn't care anymore. And then that was when the Lord was like, okay, now you're ready. Now it's time. All right.
Yeah, I get I get that.
This is the Artist Interview with Gordon T.
As a worship leader, I've certainly heard people say that there's always more, and I believe that, and I've said that as well to people. There is always more of God. How do you keep encountering God? How do you go deeper? And has there been a moment of worship for you that has been utterly profound that you just go back to and go, wow, that was such a beautiful moment with God?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot. I think that's such a good question, because I feel like I've gone in and out of seasons where maybe I don't feel the Lord as much, and if we're just going off feelings, and it's so easy to do, especially in worship music and just music in general, because it's so, emotional and just such a feeling thing. But there's been seasons where I'm like, man, Lord, I love leading worship. I love doing this, but I don't necessarily feel you that much. I don't feel maybe your presence, or just this overwhelming thing like I used to, or like I did in this one season. And sometimes I think it's maybe just a seasonal thing. And sometimes I feel like it's just a matter of me leaning into the Lord in my own times with him. And I feel like for me, it's been a thing that's been good to remember is to ground myself again back in just like the Lord and just my quiet time and hanging out in this room and lead. I always think I'm like, have I been leading myself into worship outside of like other people or corporate settings? Have I been just spending time and being a leader in my own heart towards him, to him? And usually the answer is no. When I'm feeling that wall, or I'm feeling this numb feeling all over my heart that I can't feel things. I don't feel hot or cold. I feel like numb. I feel a lot of times it's because, I haven't been actually cultivating times with the Lord in my own private secret place. And I know that a lot of times that's like it's like such a practical and normal answer to say to that, but it's like, it doesn't mean it's not true. It's just that's like, yeah, that's a lot of what it is. It's like, okay, I need to just get with the Lord on my own. And there's also times, man, you're talking about time of, past experiences of time with the Lord. There's so many times where I've felt those feelings of, there's got to be more, or I feel like I'm hitting a wall, and I've gone back and even looked at worship times or worship moments or songs in the past that maybe I've done, or just even other people that they just watching them, just being a part, just re-experiencing them and worshiping with them again has like ignited something else in me. And or even albums that have come out that just there's a handful of albums that come to mind right now, just in seasons of my life. These worship albums have come out and just lit another fire into me, or spurred me on, inspired me to go after the Lord, go further in the Lord. And I love that. I think it's what it's what makes me want to keep writing songs and keep putting out music, because I'm like, I want that to be the case for other people too. I want people who might feel like this wall or this blockage with the Lord to maybe find a song of mine that I've written, or find a moment that we've had in worship at my church. And maybe that helps get them through, or because I know that's happened for me so many times. And but I think I talked with my wife the other night. We were talking about seasons like this, and because she was just like, hey, I feel like I know you've been spending time with the Lord, but like, I feel like when you do, I feel like you need to go after this one thing. And like, she's just being very specific to go after this one area where I want breakthrough in my life. And I think it's just a matter of that. It's just, okay, I need to be very intentional about this. And yeah, he's always faithful to show me and to show up. So
Yeah. Wow. Tell you what, so your wife, Sheila, your wife, that's right,
Sheila,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
She sounds fabulous.
She's amazing. She is.
Yeah, that's cool. So, well, in fact, we'll be airing this just about the time of your 13th wedding
Oh,
anniversary.
that's
So
amazing.
congratulations again
Yeah.
to both of you. Talking about personal time with God, obviously worship and singing. You mentioned some albums that inspired you. So, what are the albums that
Yeah.
you found particularly inspirational?
Man, there's been two albums in particular over the last 3 or 4 years that have just, I felt like maybe three. There, one of them was Leland's album, Better Word. He released that album. They released that album a few years ago, and I think I had just I've been traveling a lot. I have been leading worship a lot at my church, and I think I was burnt out. Honestly, I was just feeling this burnout thing, and almost like, it's easy to get cynical. It's easy to go down that road, and it's easy to just, you start turning into to critiquing worship and to critiquing worship songs and just judging everything about it. You don't even mean to. It's just, when it's also your job and part of what you do is create music, you naturally are doing that when you're creating it, but then it's hard to shut that off when you're going into worship and just let it be about worshiping the Lord. And I was there. I was judging everything. I was critiquing everything. And I remember when that album came out, it was so refreshing to me. Leland's just the sweetest human anyway. He's just the purest of hearts. And you can feel that coming out in his worship. But then that album came out, it had Waymaker on it, and which, the whole world grabbed a hold of that song. But it was all of the songs, and there was a song on there that he I can't remember the name of it. I want to say it talks about the first love fire, bring back that first love fire in me. And that song just wrecked me. And it was, I remember thinking, this is the first worship album that in what felt like a while that I just put on and listened to all the time. And it moved me. And then I think in the last year, the album that has done that to me again was Jeremy Riddle, my friend. He released an album called Live in the Prayer Room, and just an album that him and some of my friends there in Southern California recorded in their prayer room. And it's so simple, it's very acoustic, but it's just, he's one of the most anointed worship leaders I think I've ever known and been around. And that album again, it did the same thing. It just kind of like relit this fire in me, and just passion for just going after the Lord and worship, and not necessarily music and songwriting as much as just who it's for and who it's about. And I'll say specifically a song, and it kind of like hits on the same theme that I'm talking about, but a song that has done that for me has been two songs. One, Carrie Job's song First Love is one of my all-time favorite songs. And the minute I heard that song, I was like, I'm going to lead that song a lot. And I did. I led it a lot. And I love that song. And then the song right now that's been, it's special for the whole world. Everybody knows about it now. But this song called I Speak Jesus is just moving me like no song has in a while. And it's cool because I live in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee now, and the church that we attend, it's called Hope. And the pastor, Dustin Smith, was the writer of I Speak Jesus. And so they lead it in our church all the time, this little church down the road. And I'm actually recording a live album there in a couple weeks. And I'm recording a bunch of new songs of my own, and then I'm going to record that song, I Speak Jesus, there. But I love when that happens. I love finding little like little nuggets, little like songs and worship moments that just ignite something in you and relight this fire and keep that flame burning inside for the Lord. And those are just a few that have.
That was a lovely list of recommendations, and from some really great people. So we've talked about song worship. Can you talk about reading the Bible? So for you, I'm going to guess the Bible's important to you. I'll just take a stab at that one, okay? What's your favorite Bible story and why?
Oh wow, that's a good one. Gosh, I you know what I do, because I do love. In the last few years, or well, in the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like I've had songs that come out that are that kind of are wrapped around like one particular story in the Bible, and I love that. I've written a song about Abraham, the woman at the well, the lady who touched the garment of the Lord and was healed, the woman with the issue of blood, and but I think, man, Abraham might be one of my favorites. It's hard to narrow it down, but I wrote a song about Abraham, and it was kind of along the same lines of what we've hit on, just in the waiting, and because he was the ultimate, guy in the Bible who hears the promises of the Lord, and here's what you're gonna be the father of many nations and all this, and he's like, oh cool, Lord, I am really old. And, like he's like the dramatic, the very extreme version of what I thought I was at 20 something, not being married. He's like, I am, 90 or whatever. And you're saying I'm going to be the father of many. I have no kid, and his story just feels so fascinating to me, but also hopeful. I remember I wrote this song about him and I sent it to my dad. And I just thought, this is just a cool song about Abraham. And it's in the first, it's like him singing. He's just like, on this journey, on this road, you've called me from my home. And it's just him talking about actually being told he needed to go sacrifice his son. And so that's what I thought the song's about, was just Abraham. And then I sent it to my dad, and my dad said, this song is about me. This is my journey with the Lord. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I remember my wife sent it to her father, who's a minister as well. And he was like, oh, I love this song. It just reminds me of my journey with the Lord and how faithful he's been, and, bringing the promises to light in his timing and all that. And I was like, that's funny. And then the more and more I was listening to the song, I was like, well, this reminds me of my journey. And then I realized, well, it's Abraham. He's the father of our faith. Like, yes, the Lord is like showing you in this story that he's never going to leave you, and that his promises are true and are yes and amen. And so I think for that reason, that's probably my favorite story. And also it's just, I have a song tied in with it that keeps it personal to me as well. But I feel like I learned the most about the Lord and who he is through stories in the Bible. And I love obviously reading about the Lord, reading about Jesus, but I think it's in the other stories because I don't feel like I can. It's hard to relate to Jesus sometimes to me because he's perfect. He's not. I feel yeah. I want to be like him. I feel so not like him most of my life. But when I read about a guy like David who messes up all the time, and the Lord keeps showing favor and mercy to, I'm like, okay, actually, I feel like I'm more like him. Like I can be this guy. Like I definitely mess up a lot. So I love reading stories about just how the Lord was so faithful and brought people through in the Bible.
Beautiful. And great the way that comes through into your music as well. So,
thank you.
Which of course was the way that people used to learn lots of scripture and truth was through songs and repeating songs. So it's a continuation of that long ministry. Yeah. If people want to connect you, people want to find out where you are, learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah. You can go to, there is a joshbaldwin.com. I think there's a Josh Baldwin.
There might be. Someone got a website. I'm
sure someone started something. There's definitely a website, joshbaldwin.com. There's, if you're on Instagram, I'm on Instagram. I'm very reachable on there, and usually, links and all kinds of things that you can see on Instagram and Facebook and most of the social media. That's probably the only two. I'm pretty bad at any of the other ones. Not that I'm great.
Fair enough.
Not that I'm great at those two, but I am at least on them, and there you can find me there. So you're not doing
You're not doing funny dances on TikTok then?
No, I'm not. I have a TikTok, but I bet I have, maybe 20 followers because I don't ever go on. I feel I don't.
I've not been on TikTok, so
Yeah,
I've managed to avoid it. So I
yeah.
don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
I
It's probably a
don't.
sign of my age.
Yeah, I know. I've been told that I need to get on there. It's good for your music and your career. If I'm like, well, if my song's getting out, or only if my songs are only getting out because I'm dancing on TikTok, I'm like, no one's gonna hear my music. So it's yeah. But
Has there been a moment when you've been talking to someone who maybe isn't a believer, and it's just been one of those moments where God's helped you in that conversation?
yeah, there's a story does come to mind. Um, and I was flying I lived in California, Northern California for years. And I've taken you all over the country here with my with my story. I realize that.
That's good.
Born and raised in North Carolina. I moved out to California for 6 years and now I live in Tennessee. But I was in California. I was flying back home and I was sitting next to a lady who lived in the town that I lived in. And she wasn't a Christian. I could tell just by the way she was talking about how she disliked like church and Christian, and specifically the church that I went to in that town. And I yeah, and I it was funny. I was like, I don't want to tell her that I'm a part of this church, but I didn't know any way around it when she was starting to ask me what I do and but somehow I skirted around it, and she asked me what I did and I told her, and then she was like, okay. And she was kind, but she was just talking about the things she disliked about really just Christianity in general and the church. But it felt like more towards church. And I was just like, Lord, what do I say to this lady? Also, I'm very tired. I'm just, coming back off a trip. And I'm like, it was kind of like the last thing I wanted to do was just to try to defend church and the Lord to this lady who I probably was never going to see again. But then I was like, this is probably why I was put in this seat right here next to this lady. Of all the flights I could have been on, of all the seats, I got stuck right here by this lady who's complaining about going back to the town she lives in and the church that's there and that I happen to be a part of. And I just remember, I remember listening to her and just being kind. I felt like the Lord was like, just listen, be kind, and then share your experience. And I was like, all right. So I did. I heard her, and there's a lot. She had a lot of validating reasons that I was like, I get it. And I told her my experience with the Lord and with church, and I was like, I grew up in church. My dad's a pastor. My parents. We didn't talk about this earlier, but my parents got divorced when I was 17 years old. My
Gosh.
And yeah, my dad was the pastor of our church that was the biggest church in my little town. And I've had a lot. I was like, I just told her, like, I've had a lot of hurt, by people in the church. And I said, I've always just had to remember, like, these are people. This isn't the Lord hurting me. This isn't the heart that the Lord doesn't even, he does not have a heart for this. He doesn't want this. But I was like, people are people and people mess up. And I remember just sharing my story with her and how through all that, I still love the Lord, but not just that. I love the church, and I showed her all the ways that the church and my church family had actually helped me and kept me from going down a path that was towards destruction. And just, and I could have grown up in a world where I hated church, because of what it did to my parents or my dad. And gosh, I don't know what would have happened if that would have been the case. I would not have been where I am now. And I fully believe that where I am now is not only because I love the Lord and I've just stayed connected with him, but also I've always just had a love for the church and for his bride. And I just tried in that moment to share that with her. But also I finally at the end told her that I actually do go to that church that she was talking about. And I just was sharing the heart of I know a lot of the leaders, and let me tell you what their heart is for our city. And I just started sharing with her, like, at that moment the church, our church was helping to fund police officers in our little town so that we could keep the amount of law enforcement that we really need to, just to keep it safe, and just little things like that. Like, I just tried to share the other side of the story and like, hey, here's my heart. And but it ended up being like a really cool conversation. I saw her heart like soften, and I don't know, it didn't go I didn't like lead her to the Lord. I didn't get her to come to my church and be a member, but I felt like in that moment the most important thing was to listen to her and then just share my experience. And I think like that's like the simple way of summing it up, like who we are called to be to the world, is to just to listen, be loving, but then also, okay, on the other end, now you share what the Lord's done for you. You share how he's brought you to this place, or what he's brought you out of, or how he's kept you from going into something that could have been, destructive. And so that was like that moment is like the moment that sticks out the most when I think about someone who is kind of, the opposite of maybe who I am in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That makes a load of sense. And wonderful advice to listen as well, to hear the other person's heart and see where they're coming from. So, because it's so easy to jump in with being defensive and stuff, but brilliant tip. So great. Thank you so much, Josh. Has there been a time when someone has given you feedback on how one of your songs has impacted them that you particularly remember?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a handful of times, a lot of times. I've been blessed in that. I mean, that never gets old. I think sometimes people will preface whatever they're saying or writing to me and say like, I'm maybe you hear this all the time and maybe it's, it gets old. And I'm like, this never gets, are you kidding me? Like, I've written many songs that no one's cared about. And so to have a song or songs that people want to share how it's touched them, or how, like, testimonies, really it's the ones that there's been a handful of people reach out about Evidence, this song of mine that just talks about the evidence of the Lord's goodness and faithfulness in my life. And a handful of these people have each story kind of centered around someone coming out of being healed from cancer. Like, I've gotten 2 or 3 different videos of people who when their chemo is done and they're officially cancer free, they can ring the bell in the hospital, and it's this whole, it's an amazing thing. It's so emotional. And a handful of them requested that my song Evidence be played as they ring this bell that signifies that they're cancer free. And that's just some of the most moving stories, to know that, like, maybe a song that I've written in a season that I was in where I was struggling has ministered to people, and they've listened to it, and they say like, I listened to this song, because I was having a hard time like believing that the Lord's good, and it's amazing because I'm like, yeah, I wrote that song because I was having a hard time. It's just the Lord's amazing, and that you just think, well, here's what happens. I feel like the enemy, he wants to trick us. He wants to tell us that we're alone and that we're the only ones going through what we're going through, and there's no hope. And but really, most of these testimonies that I hear from songs I've written or worship nights or whatever, it's people wanting to just let me know, I thought I was all alone, and listening to this song or being in this worship moment, I realized that not only is the Lord with me, but there's other people going through the same thing, that I'm not alone even here on earth with other people. And so that's it's been so encouraging.
It's life-changing stuff. Music that leads us to truth in Jesus changes the direction of our lives as we come before the King of Kings and worship him wholeheartedly. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal ministry that you're involved in.
So blessed.
And I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful for your music, my friend. So you mentioned the song Evidence, and that is our final track that we've got lined up. Is there anything further you'd like to say about it before we play it?
This song, we were talking about the pandemic and all that. I wrote the song right before the pandemic, and I wrote it in 2019. And I remember we had it scheduled to come out in 2020, and then everything happened, and we were gonna hold it, and I was like, no, this is like, I need this more than ever now. I need this song out and for me. And so that's when it came out, and that year it was like this song that grounded our family, just to let in the ups and downs of everything going on. The thing that always helps me is to just remind myself of who the Lord is, remind myself of all he's done. And that's what the song talks about, is just like, man, it's hard for me to look around and not see the evidence of the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God, and the evidence of just, the promises that I was talking about earlier. That's what the song talks about too. The promises that I see, the promises that I was given years ago coming into fulfillment and in fruition. And, and so this is a song that I will never get tired of singing. I've written plenty of songs that I get tired of singing, maybe here and there, but I will never get tired of singing this song. It means so much to me, and I'm just so thankful for the Lord for it.
That was Evidence by Josh Baldwin, and thanks so much to Josh for joining us today, sharing a bit of his story and his lovely music with us on the Artist Interview. And thank you so much, dear listener, for joining us and taking us on a journey together, I guess, as we find out more about God's amazing love. And there are many other interviews that you can enjoy. Just go to your favourite podcast platform and search up The Artist Interview. It's the one with the red logo. God would really like to bless you, reveal more of himself to you, and help you to encounter him through the gift of music. God bless you. I look forward to joining you on the next episode.
You've been listening to The Artist Interview, a Hope FM podcast. Find us at hopefm.com/The Artist Interview.